How to become a millionaire with 5 simple steps.
There is a lot of advice out there telling you how to make that first million, showing you just how easy it is. Here's an example of what we're seeing. We're not so sure about it.
How do you make that much money? I'm going to show you exactly how I became a millionaire. So this is me with Melissa Lee.
Humble brag.
And this is them showing off my portfolio on live TV. Just that you know, I'm not capping. So Elon Musk, he made a tweet using the word elongate. After this tweet, I saw a cryptocurrency named elongate that was just released. So I threw 10 grand in right around there, and it
Where'd he get 10
freaking blew
grand?
up. Keep in mind, this happened in a span of like a month, and I was just watching as the price went insane. On April 19th of this year, the 10,000 that I put in turned into over $1 million. And that's pretty much how I became a millionaire. Now, it's your turn.
Oh, it's
Oh, my
so
word.
simple.
So
Oh,
easy.
man.
Just, find the next elongate and just throw $10,000 in there.
So
Wow.
just to reflect on this, just a touch, just to take in. First of all, before I throw shade, let me give a compliment. At least he's going to be honest and tell us, hey, this is how I made my $1 million. I'm going to take it that means that he actually sold the shares at the top and he
Right.
kept it, because
I hope so, for his
if we
sake.
checked on, has anybody checked on, by the way, elongate or
I think it's
elongate?
elongate. That's how he said it.
Okay.
And it's because Elon
What
Musk.
has happened to elongate?
You want to see?
Yeah. Oh,
It's not doing
man.
so well.
that
As Brian pointed out,
line,
that's zero. That's not a lot of range on this chart.
there's a lot of zeros. There's decimal 0.000000078. I mean, that's a lot. So hopefully he truly turned it into wealth. Otherwise, we need
Right.
to go check on him. This is one of those things where I worry about so much of social media, the influencers of making wealth building seem simple, but really what he described was a lottery ticket.
Exactly. Like, we agree that making $1 million might be more simple than a lot of people tell you, but it's not this like hot ticket lottery magic thing. But here, the good news is we're going to tell you the 5 steps of how to actually make that first million the smart way. And I'm very excited about it. So let's dive right into the first point. It is find a way to create disposable income. If you're going to make $1 million, you have to start with something, right?
Yeah, and I would encourage everybody, think about this. If you're in a job that you just don't see where you're going with it, how do you build a big enough shovel that you can hopefully have enough income not only to pay your expenses, but also to have extra margin that you can invest? Because remember, the game ultimately is you're trading your time currently to pay the bills, but eventually you want to trade the money so you control the time. You've got to have income and margin to make that happen.
Right. And then the next step is to engage with the FOO to know exactly where to put your next dollar. FOO stands for Financial Order of Operations. That's our tried and true 9-step process to tell you exactly what to do with your next dollar. You can actually get a copy of it for free. Just go to moneyguy.com/resources. If you want the overview, or the deep dive is in our course at learn.moneyguy.com. But this is going to really set you up for success. It's going to give you that security, but it's also going to give you the ability to grow that army of dollars that you're starting with that disposable income.
Well, I think this is so important because it's easy to say, number one, find a way to create disposable income. All right, genius.
Cool.
That's just common sense. But nobody ever actually gives you these steps. Okay, so if I can create margin, how do I actually create wealth? We've given it to you. We actually have created the what to do with your next dollar. It is the Financial Order of Operations. And what I like is if you will follow this, it's going to help you avoid the big pitfalls, because
Right.
I think a lot of people, we hear about the latte effect, and you can't, watch out for your subscriptions and watch out for, how often you're getting coffee and all the other things, or eating out. And those things are true because you do want to have a disciplined lifestyle. But it's not the 1,000 paper cuts that takes you out. It's a lot of the lifestyle decisions, of like the cars, the houses. And by the way, we had one of our listeners, viewers, post this on Twitter. Or is this actually a YouTube comment? This looks like a YouTube comment.
It was on YouTube, yeah, from Kurt.
But look at what Kurt says here, because I love the part that we highlighted.
Yeah, he says, I'm far from perfect financially, but I fall prey to the 1,000 cuts or 1,000 paper cuts, like the latte effect, rather than the headman's X, the decisions like the cars, the big financial decisions. Those big swings are easy to see coming, and you only have to dodge them a dozen times or so over the course of your life.
Yeah, so that's why if you'll use the financial order of operations, you'll not only avoid the missteps of like buying too nice of a car too early, buying a house that you can't afford, but you'll also maximize the investment side, because that is the game. Take your income, create margin. That's step one. Step two is maximize what you're doing with the investments so that you can grow this so you get to do life on your terms.
All right. And step three, now we're getting to the investing. Invest in low cost and tax efficient investments.
Yeah, this is, once again, we're making this easy for you guys. You know, step one, we told you go create income with margin so you can then invest or know what to do with your next dollar, whether it's paying down debt. That's the financial order of operations. But then when it gets to investing, because people say, how do I make my money work so hard for me? That seems complicated. There's entire industries that are trying to create scrambled eggs in your head to essentially sell you something. We tell you, cut all the noise, start investing in a low cost, and we like index target retirement funds, because index funds whoop up on all the managers. And we even have the proof and the facts to show this.
Here's how often index funds beat actively managed accounts. If you look at large cap, mid cap, small cap, international, well over 80, almost 90% of the time, the index funds are coming out on top. And that's really good news for a normal investor, just like you or me, because that means we have access to something that's actually going to grow our army of dollar bills in a very simple way. This is a smart way to get to that $1 million.
Well,
I love it.
This makes sense. I mean, think about it. You're asking why. I mean, if you look at this on a 15-year period, long term, how are these things able to beat the active managers, consistently 80+% of the time? And the reason is the internal expenses are practically free. I mean, these things are as close to free as you can be. They're also extremely tax efficient because they just don't have as much turnover as active managers are trying to make the best decisions out there, and they screw it up a lot of times. And then what I love is kind of the third benefit is it's buying into the markets. I mean, any type of innovation, any type of growth as the pizza pie of our economy is getting bigger, you are participating in that. So take advantage of this. This is what I'm telling you. Go look at the index target retirement funds, look at the S&P 500, look at the total market index. Those are great places to start your investment research.
A few years ago when I was starting my investing journey, this was music to my ears because I wasn't up on all of the flashy big investments. I wasn't prepared to go pick stocks. This was great news for me because it let me just get in immediately. I didn't have to have a huge learning curve, and then I can learn more as I go and still have that money working for me. So this is great news. So once you have that money in an index, low cost, tax efficient investment, don't stop until you hit that $1 million. Keep investing, keep dollar cost averaging every month, every so often, put your money in, and then keep going, because not only can you get to that $1 million, you can actually even go beyond it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those, look, when you see $1 million right there, even though there's a lot of trolls that are saying that it's not as much money as it used to be, it's still a lot of money. And I know that this is aspirational in a lot of ways, but the reality is that it's not going to come all at once. If you just start this behavior of automatically building wealth, saving, doing the financial order of operations, using those index funds, I think you're going to find that this builds. You'll first build $10,000, and then when you make 10% on $10,000, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's think of making $1,000, and then when it crosses $100,000, you're like, whoa,
wow.
Now when it replaces, 10% on $100,000 is $10,000. So that's like, man, that's like 3 months worth of living expenses I just replaced with my army of dollars. And then as you can imagine, if you can just be consistent, no matter what's going on, always be buying, you're going to find one day you wake up, your portfolio's crossed 7 figures, and now your money is working just as hard as you. But we wanted to go beyond this, Rebe. We didn't want to stop with just this aspirational saying you're trying to get to $1 million and beyond. We actually want to show you, what does this look like starting from zero?
Yeah, how long does this actually take to get to $1 million? If you're starting from zero today and you just invest $500 per month, and we're going to assume you're earning about 8% annually. So that's kind of the assumption there. But still, look, $500 a month. you can get to $1 million in less than 34 years, which actually, when you think about starting when you're kind of young, like in your 20s to the time you might want to retire, that's plenty of time. And then also, if you just kick it up a notch and do $1,000, that's only 25 and a half years. If you do $2,000 a month, you're getting down into 18 or 19 years. So just think about if you could leverage this concept and see how much you can invest. And it might not take you as long as you think to get there. And then you're looking at being a millionaire or multimillionaire. And that's fantastic.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not all or nothing. We did this for an educational piece to show 500 versus 5,000 or even 10,000 a month and how fast. But the reality is you're going to do some hybrid of this. You might in your 20s be aspiring to get to $500 a month, but it's not going to surprise you that as you get to your late 30s, maybe you are doing $2,000 a month, and maybe in your 40s you're doing $5,000 a month. It's going to be a combination. And by the way, here's what I love about wealth building. And this is why I try to convince young people, start as soon as possible, because I just need you to catch the bug of, look, bugs right now, after coming through a pandemic, probably not the greatest analogy, but still, hear me out on this. If you can catch the bug of the fact that your money starts working for you, meaning you put $1,000 a month in, and then one day you look up and you say, wow, that thing really did replace 4 months of what it would take for me to work with my back, my hands, my brain. This is really something. I'm going to see if I can accelerate this, because it is possible, even for people who are starting later. Maybe you're in your 40s. We show here, if you're saving $10,000 a month, you will be a millionaire in a little over 5 years, at 6.4 years, even with a very modest 8% annual rate of return. You can do this.
Yeah. And the great thing is that we have resources for you even about this. Like Brian said, this was just a case study to kind of get the concept out there. But if you go to moneyguy.com/resources and get our wealth multiplier, it's free. It's going to tell you how powerful your dollars are right now. So you can actually take, hey, I can invest this much money and then multiply it by your age, your specific age. And it's going to tell you how much that has the potential to grow. And so I highly recommend going to moneyguy.com/resources and grabbing that, because that is a huge, awesome resource for you. Okay. Last but not least, step 5, you're going to reach the point where you can trade your money for time. And I know you get really excited about this part.
Yeah, this is the thing that I feel like so much of the social media world is trying to YOLO everybody, telling you, hey, live your best young version, because when you're older, and they always use like an example of like when you're 65 and 75, you'll be lame and not be able to do stuff. By the way, that's probably not true, based upon life expectancies plus how active people are because of health breakthroughs and so forth. The reality is, though, if you can do this right, you get to live your life, your best financial life, on your terms. You do what you want, when you want, how you want. And this is one of those things I love. If you can balance out, we talked about, we read this whole Twitter string of decision raisers out there. And I loved one that said, make sure that your 80-year-old self loves your decisions just as much as your 20-year-old self, because that's the balance between the YOLO of the 20-year-old versus the 80-year-old that wants to give you the big sloppy kiss and bear hug because they're so happy with it.
Investing.
Is that, look, I'm about to go on vacation. Taking the family, we're going over to Paris because my oldest daughter graduated from high school. And I didn't have to wait until I was 65 to do that. And that's what I'm telling you. Deferred gratification is a powerful thing where if you can do this, you don't have to quit work. You just get to make decisions on your terms, because you have now passed the threshold of you're not working so that you can have the money to pay the bills. You are working because you're fulfilled, and you also have the capability now to trade a little bit of that money that you've been building over these decades, and it's been compounding, to do your time on your terms. And there is nothing more fulfilling, because here's the other thing I found. The wealthier I've gotten, because my compounding of my armies has worked, I actually get to do things I'm passionate about. I get to go after things that maybe aren't the best financial decision, but what I'm always surprised by is the unintended benefit that typically happens when I pursue something that I'm passionate about, not even for the money, but it somehow turns into a very fruitful endeavor. And I think that clarity that you get from pursuing your passion, because you make great decisions in your 20s and 30s, is something that is truly priceless.
Yeah, you give me a lot of inspiration because you're saying, hey, in my 20s and even in my 30s, I buckled down. I had this strategy. I invested. Essentially, you followed these 5 steps, and now you're able to make this memory with your daughter before she goes off to college. And I think that's really awesome. You're able to let your foot off the gas, as you say. And so it does pay off.
I do think it's important, though, because I just talked, and that was because I love that we give the meat. I mean, we actually give the details on data points and so forth. And I felt like what I just shared was very aspirational. Fortunately, we have a tool that brings it all together, that turns the dream, so you're just not a dreamer, actually lets you see analytically how are you doing in all this.
Yeah, this is our net worth tool, and there's a whole dashboard. It's going to show you exactly where your money has been in the past, where you're headed in the future, and where you are right now on your path to get there. In one little section, this is just one section on a full dashboard, it's going to show you how powerful your army of dollars actually is. You can see just how much you've invested and just how much that money has grown on its own, and it's actually working for you. And once that you get to, you can see on this example on the screen, it's at 54%. Once you get to 100%, Brian, you were telling me that's kind of like a little bit of a magical moment or milestone, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you're trying to do, and look, even if you don't have our tool, I want you to think about this in terms of when you look at your annual net worth statement. I mean, you better be doing that and keeping track of what's going on. If you can compare the change in the value of your investments and then compare that to what you make in income, it's going to, that's what we're actually showing you here is what are you replacing? And you're right. Once you get to 50%, that's showing, wow, half the year was kind of covered by what my money did for me. Once it crosses 100%, that might be the first clue. Hey, maybe I ought to go stress test this thing. I might be financially independent and doing life on my terms. Just make sure you are doing all the work to maximize your potential. And also this gives you, like I said, the freedom to live your best financial life and actually pursue the things that make you feel fulfilled and excited to wake up in the morning. So
if you're interested in a progress tracker like this, it's going to help you know kind of where you are financially. Just head to learn.moneyguy.com. You can buy the Money Guy Net Worth tool right there. It's been really cool to see the feedback on it so far. Lots of people tracking their financial growth, and we love to see it. So that's how you get to $1 million. Not necessarily how the TikTokers tell you to do it, but it is still simple, and you can definitely do it. And then keep going. Are you ready to go to some questions, Brian?
Yeah, first, I don't mind sharing. If y'all wondering what happened to Bo,
that's true.
Because I'm worried he might watch in and go, what happened to Bo? Because we kind of just went, woo, we jumped right in that thing. Bo's at the beach with the family.
Yeah, I mean, even Bo has to take, some time off every now and then.
Yeah, so I love it. He's, if you're down in Daytona Beach, driving on the beach and you look over to the right and see a bunch of kids and, and hanging out on the beach, it's probably Bo and his family.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I much prefer when you're both here. That makes the most fun, best show. But second best is the honor of sitting at the desk with the Money Guy, Brian Preston.
So let's do Bo proud and answer some questions.
Yes.
Here. And you're doing awesome, Reeves.
All right. I do have a question out here from Justin. He says, my wife and I just bought a home. We are both in our 30s and have a 5.5% rate. She wants to pay off the house yesterday, right? How can I help persuade her to prioritize saving for the future? And how do they make that decision, Brian? How much should they be putting down on this house versus how much should they be investing?
So did you say 5.5%?
Yes.
Okay, and they're in their 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Did Justin give us what their savings or / investment rate is?
He didn't, so you should probably want to hit on that because that's going to be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. Justin, look, 5.5 is more than it's historically been in the past, but also I take into account with where are you at in your financial order of operations. I want you to, go look at the steps. If I guess go to moneyguy.com/resources, you can also download our free deliverable. Apply that to your life, see where you are. And it is one of those things because I am more worried for somebody in their 30s that there's a risk that you won't be wealthy and independent in the future. Whereas once you get to around 45 and you've done all the right things, you're now at risk of how do you keep the wealth that you built over the years. But that's not for the majority of the people. Majority of the people never went through the wealth building process in their 20s and 30s. where they even have to worry about that crossover point. So my worry for you, Justin, is if you're focusing on paying off that mortgage, which is step 9 of the financial order of operations, before you're doing the Roth, before you're doing your 401ks, even before you're, building up the emergency reserves just in case you have a hiccup that causes you not to be able to pay your bills as well. You're going to be so thankful that you followed that process before you paid off that, and it cringes me up to say low, interest on mortgages, but still I think 5.5 historically is not the craziest thing, because my first house was 6.75%, and I thought I stole it because rates had just gone through. It was like 7.5% a few months earlier. I think we're coming back to a more historical norm in the 4s and 5s. So that's not what I would consider high interest yet. So it is one of those things, I think you balance it out and still process and go through the full financial order of operations.
Yeah. And, again, these are all free for you, what I'm about to say. That's why I just feel like I have to mention it again, because this is a great place to pull out that wealth multiplier. Again, if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, you can show your wife and actually make it a conversation. Like, you want her to feel like she's part of this decision. You don't want to just make all the financial decisions, right? And so you can actually show her like, hey, here's why I'm thinking maybe we want to do this differently. Look how much our money can make now while we're in our 30s versus, once maybe we've had this house more paid off. And so you can just actually have an informed conversation and bring her along with you and, maybe introduce her to something that she hasn't thought of before. And that's a really beautiful thing.
I do have one little thing, because I feel like since Bo's not here, we'll give the ghost of Bo a little bit, because this is something he's always nudging me on. And I think somebody who's in their 30s, like Justin and his spouse are, this could be a really valuable tool and a fun exercise for them. Why don't you because look, the market's gotten its teeth kicked in. Mm-hmm. We're actually in a bear market right now. So when the markets are down, your contrarian spidey senses should be going off, and you could say, hey, is this a wealth building opportunity in the long term? Why not, assuming you've already maxed out your Roth accounts and so forth, still respecting the financial order of operations. But if you are at that point of step 7, hyperaccumulation, why not, instead of what you would pay off that mortgage with, set up that investment account like Bo always talks about, that brokerage account between you and your spouse. Start dollar cost averaging every month into an index fund or something that would do well with the market that we're experiencing with the volatility, and look at this in 3 to 5 years, and then ask yourself, do we want to take this money to pay down the mortgage, or do we want to keep on our wealth building journey? It could be a really cool exercise for you and your significant other to kind of do a challenge here of what's the best path. I think I know where things are going to fall in the long term, but it will still be a great learning exercise for you.
I love it. And Bo would be proud.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Ratty's question. Ratty says, I was on track until the market tanked, Brian. Mm-hmm. Even saving 25%, I'm still negative for the year. How long does it usually take to recover from a recession? This is kind of an interesting time for a lot of people, so I think that this is a good thing to speak to right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably feeling this way. I even got a text from a client last night saying, hey, about time we have a meeting to kind of, just talk about strategy, figure things out. I just want to make sure we're still on track.
Yeah, I looked at my Roth the other day. I hadn't in a while, and I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it never feels good. That's why I always, first lesson here. If you're young enough that this is your first true downturn, because really the last time now look, you could say the pandemic, but that was such a fast turnaround recovery when the market lost that 35%. If you blinked or took a nap, you kind of didn't feel that completely. This one seems a little more prolonged, more like what we experienced historically when you had like the Great Recession of 2008. So I always tell people, bank up how you're feeling right now, because this is the type of skill set, if you can learn how to harness how you react emotionally and then apply that to your analytics and your financial life, this is worth its weight in gold. This is experience that will create value in your life. But you're trying to figure out, how long does this take to recover? And remember, we talk about markets. If you need a visual, if you're a visual learner, you are walking up a big mountain, a huge mountain that you're never going to get to the top of, with a yo-yo. So you're going up and down, but over the long term, you're going to higher and higher ground. But that sounds great when you're not experiencing a bear market. But a lot of you are like, okay, I hear that. That's why I stayed the course. But now I've watched my portfolio drop 20%. how long is this going to take to fix? We know, look, when you lose 20%, mathematically you have to make 25% to get it back. But this is why we diversify, because if you lose 50%, it takes 100% to make that back. So mathematics is the more you lose, the harder it is to come back from. So this is why we spread our assets out to get diversification, the power of that, because you hopefully can recover faster, because markets do fortunately recover in a very fast way. It's called a V-shaped recovery. And we know from some, we don't have this. This is where eventually we're going to have the ability to whip stuff up on the screen when we do these live Q&As. But I know these, fortunately, I know this from just covering this so much, is that when we hit the bottom of this bear market, nobody knows when that is yet, but when we do hit that very bottom day, it will happen, just like it happened in March of 2009, and nobody knew that, hey, that day, I think it was like March 8th or 9th, nobody knew that was the bottom day. Just like in November of 2002, nobody knew that was the bottom trading day. But here's what we do know. If you look at this, within the first year, historically, the market makes and recovers 40% of the down losses.
Yeah, that's
it's
incredible.
a 40% return from the bottom. And by the way, the first month is like 15% historically. So this is one of the things why you can't time it, is because it will turn really quick. And in our own research of watching clients and other things, depending upon your asset allocation, how much risk you're taking, but typically our clients have recovered, if we looked at past downturns, they had recovered within 2 to 3 years. So it's meaning they had recovered all the money that was lost and were back to making more. And it could be as fast as 1.7 years. It really depends upon how much you lost on the downside. Did you stay the course? And then were you piling money into this, meaning that you felt like you were facing volatility, but you'd always be buying into this process, can actually really cut the edge off of how much it's hurting you.
Yeah, I think
take
it's
advantage of those
easy
tools.
to like look at the scary downturn and think, oh, maybe I should hold off my investing right now. And it's actually the opposite, especially for people who are younger or earlier on their journey. So that was a really good explanation.
Yeah, I always tell the contrarian side of me, and now this is not a perfect thing, but it's something just to keep in the back of your mind. What feels safe in the long term can be risky. What feels risky in the long term might actually be safe for your long-term wealth building journey. Pay attention to those things, because these are, like I said, downturns it's really hardening the steel of your resolve on your wealth building journey.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your question, Ratty. That was a good one. I know it's a weird time, so hopefully that kind of helps you feel more certain about where you are in your financial journey. Okay, question from Ryan. He says, I am 26 years old and I just quit my job, but I already have another one lined up. What should I do with my old employer 401k? I have contributed to a Roth 401k, but now am I able to move this to my Roth IRA? Or is there another option, Brian? What should he do?
Yeah, it's this is a good question. By the way, what does create a little bit of uniqueness here is that it's a Roth element versus traditional savings, because Roth grows tax-free, which is always really powerful. First thing I always look at is, I say you have several options here. You can leave it where you are. You don't have to take the money. Once the money is over, I think these numbers still hold up. I'd have to see if they've been indexed, but I think it's around $5,000. Once your account value is over $5,000, your employer, your past employer, can't just kick you out and write you a check. Because that is, if your account's just $1,000 or so, you do have to be very careful that they don't just cash you out. You get the penalty and all the other things that come with it. So, but I think assuming that Ryan has over, a few $1,000 in this thing, he's going to have the option first to stay put. And why would you do that? You might want to stay put if you have like a big provider, like say a Vanguard, a Fidelity, a Charles Schwab, somebody who's already low cost, has great diversification options. You could just stay where you are. Now, there's a downside to that, and the fact that what if you don't like dealing with your former employer's HR department? Because you do have some strings attached to a former life now, and maybe you just that's too much to overcome. But I'll leave it to those two, the pluses and minuses. But just also know you have the option. You could roll it into an IRA, as you mentioned. And what I like about IRAs is that you do control where you keep it. Like if you wanted to go take advantage of those three big custodians that are low cost historically, like the Schwabs, the Fidelities, and the Vanguards, you could then roll that money into a Roth IRA. You're completely independent of your employer. And that's good. And then you have control of, if you need to do any unique things with this, you have all the ability to do things with. And then the third option is you roll it into your new employer. Maybe that's where you come from a very expensive employer, where it's like an insurance provider or some sub account structure where it's really expensive when you look at all the fees that you're being subjected to. But now you're going to a big company that has access to that Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard type 401k. If you want to keep your life simple, because, an IRA, because you're going to have your 401k with your new employer. If you'd rolled it into a Roth IRA, you have a separate IRA that you're now disclosing on your annual taxes and stuff. You could keep your life really simple and just roll it into the new 401k provider, assuming it's one of these low costs. It's really on you. I think but you make sure you don't skip the step of the due diligence of figuring out, hey, what do I actually pay for my plan? How good are the investment options within my plan? Meaning that do I have access to index funds? Do I have access to different asset classes? Because that's the problem I see with a lot of 401ks. They just have access to bonds, large cap stocks, and that's where it stops. Whereas maybe you want some international, maybe you want some real estate, maybe you want some small company stocks and index funds in there. All these things go into your decision-making matrix. Mm-hmm. And then if you'll go through this step, I think you'll end up in a really good place.
Yeah. I love it. And then it goes without saying, make sure you're jumping right on that new employer 401k match too, if you have that. So thanks so much for your question, Ryan. That was great. Okay. We have a question from Houston. He says, my wife and I are in our late 20s and saving about 35%, which is fantastic.
Boom.
We have not maxed out our 401k or 403b accounts, but with our current savings rate, should we move on to step 7 of the financial order of operations? Step 7 is that hyperaccumulation phase where you get some more complexity in your investing. What should they do?
Well, actually, Houston might already be there with his significant other and his spouse. And the fact that, because a little story time here. We were speaking to this engineering group. There was this really fascinating company that we got hired to come in and talk to. It was all engineers. They deal with like structural concrete. And all the people were just brilliant. You could just tell these are top of the class type people. And this company was big enough that they actually they have like a planning retreat, like a State of the Union type thing where they have all their new employees, meaning employees that have only been there for a year or two. They not only try to give you good educational things in their industry, but they try to bring in speakers like us to talk about how to manage your money as you build wealth and do that well. I thought it was a really great 360 approach that employers ought to copy and use, because it's really noble to not only help people have a successful career track, but also make sure they maximize their opportunities. But I will never forget, we're talking about the financial order of operations. And I realized this is one of the things we put in our course. If you go to learn.moneyguy.com, we actually have a deep dive course to make sure we clarify this point. But it was an engineer, she raised her hand and she goes, hey, it seems really cruel and kind of selfish that I'm saving all this money. If I'm saving 35, 40%, I'm not even funding my kids' college. What am I doing here? And I was like, no, we need to clarify this. And I think this is where Houston, him and his spouse are already saving greater than 35%, but yet they think they're stuck at step 6 because they haven't maxed out their 401k. Max 401k is doing a lot, that language of max your 401k is doing a lot of heavy lifting because it could have several different meanings. When I hear max 401k, and I think this is the problem Houston is having, he's hearing $20,500 for him and maybe $20,500 for their spouse. But that's not, I mean, if you think about in terms of financial order of operations, our aspirational goal for you is to get you to 25% of your gross income working for you through a savings rate of 25%. So there's a chance, because we did an example, I think, in the course where if your household makes less than $80,000 a year, there's a chance you could be saving and investing 25% of your income, and you're not going to reach the $20,500.
Right. Yeah. So then what do you do?
Does that mean you can't go? No, that means you can definitely go to step 7, hyperaccumulation, which that whole purpose of hyperaccumulation is where you're now starting to think about, hey, I don't want to make sure that I'm not saving only in retirement assets, because at some point I'd like to be able to pay cash for cars. I'd like to make sure I have liquidity in case, some uncertain thing comes my way, or I want to take advantage of an investment opportunity of buying real estate or doing something else like that. I need to have different structures. I need to have after-tax money. I need to have tax deferred, like your employer match and your traditional 401k. I need to have tax-free, which is your Roth. So that's why we say once you're saving 25% of your gross income, you can graduate from step 6, even if you haven't reached the maximum, the annual limit that the government allows of $20,500. I'm even going to say you can graduate past step 7 if you're saving 25% and you've gone through the efforts of looking to make sure you have the bridge account, meaning the after tax. You've maximized the structure between tax-free and tax-deferred to step 8. So just in case Houston has children or they have other goals they want to be saving for, you can start doing these things because you've already kind of paid yourself first. And that's the most important thing, is you have the behavior that creates success and wealth of paying yourself first.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. That was a fantastic question, Houston. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, this is step 7, what are these steps? These are our 9 tried and true steps called the financial order of operations, going to help you maximize the money that you have and know exactly what to do with your next dollar. And if you want a deep dive, like Brian just mentioned, we have a whole course in which he kind of actually breaks that down even further about how to know when to move to which step and how to customize it for your situation. You can go to learn.moneyguide.com and sign up for that course. You get all the video content, all the homework content. You also get access to our Facebook group where there's a bunch of other financial mutants in there discussing, how to figure this out for their own life. All these financial questions, people are, sharing stories, sharing how they do it. It's a really great place to expand upon this knowledge as well. So learn.moneyguide.com if you're interested in that. Okay. The Sorrow 312 has a question. If you have all retirement accounts fully maxed and are allocating all other disposable income towards accumulating rental properties as a strategy, do you think that that's a reasonable strategy? So retirement accounts are fully maxed. Now he's looking at the rest of his disposable income thinking, I think I'm going to go rental property and throw it all there.
What do you think? I love this question because it actually, now look, I know when this gets broken into a highlight clip, you're not going to see the previous question that was done here, but it does kind of relate to this, is that I love when people are going through the financial order of operations. And I know this sounds repetitive, but like I said, it's going to be a highlight. Go to moneyguy.com/resources. You can download the free 9-step deliverable. If you want the deep dive, you can go to learn.moneyguy.com and we actually can give you a deep dive on it. But it's not uncommon that a lot of people, successful achievers, will save and maximize the financial order operations and then get in their late 20s, 30s, maybe even early 40s and realize I've got a lot of retirement assets, but I don't have a lot of liquid assets. Why do I need to have liquid assets? And this is why we have the graduation point from step 6, which is max out retirement accounts, to step 7, which is hyperaccumulation. Remember, the trigger point there is that you're actually saving and investing 25% of your gross income. But the reason we have the hyperaccumulation step of step 7 is that it is the realization that, man, there is more to life than all just retirement assets all the time. And
Right.
That's what, especially because he's already let it be clear, he's hoping to get into rental property.
Mm-hmm.
We love real estate. I mean, Bo and I have shared, we have 8-figure real estate investments ourselves that we help administer, but you have to do it at the right time, right place, because real estate is great because of the tax benefits. It's also the leverage growth opportunity. However, it is really expensive when the tide goes out, meaning if we hit this downturn market, real estate values are a struggle, renters start tearing up your houses, and there's a lot of turnover. It's very far from passive at that point, and you better have deep pockets to get you through the storm that comes your way with real estate. So what we've built into the financial order of operations is where you have done the 25% maxing out retirement, you can go to hyperaccumulation. And anybody who's thinking about doing real estate, make sure you've built that bridge account of after-tax bucket of money so that you can have your liquidity to where no matter what comes your way in the real estate marketplace, you will be okay, that you will come out on the other side and maybe even have some opportunities to pick up deals and other things when everybody else is swimming naked with no cash and no liquidity. That's when real opportunity happens, is when you make your money on real estate, when you purchase real estate, actually. And a lot of times, because if you can get a really good valuation, and that's a little harder right now with the huge run up we've had in prices. And that's why real estate investing typically is step 8 of the financial order of operations, because it's after you've gone through maxing out retirement. It's after you've looked at the 3 buckets between the after-tax, the tax-deferred, and then the tax-free. You have a good bridge account there with enough liquidity. to go to step 8, which is the prepaid future expenses. That's when I like people to do real estate investing, because that way you really are living your best life, because you've got the foundation of financial assets underneath you, so that if things get ugly out there in the financial world, because I've shared this and I think it's important, bad stuff they're all extroverts. They all love hanging out with others. So you'll have downturns in the real estate marketplace, the same time as unemployment spiking, same time the financial markets will be down 20%. They all hang out together, and you just want to make sure that you have enough liquidity to get you to the other side.
You know, there's so much buzz about real estate. Like, this is what's going to make you $1 million. If you have money, you need to go throw it in real estate. That's especially out there, like on TikTok and YouTube. There's people that are saying that. And I think sometimes we will react to those things and say like, whoa, 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 look at the financial order of operations. But what I love about you guys is not that you don't like real estate. And like, we're very clear about that. It's that you want people to do it the right way. You don't want them to get caught. Like you say, the saying with when the tide goes out, you see
you don't want to be caught naked. You don't want your skinny dipping without the foundation. Look, there's a lot of people who got lucky. I mean, there is the most punchable person in the world that I watch on social media sometimes, and he's telling everybody how to get rich in real estate and other things. And I'm like, there's enough truth there that it gets you intrigued. But as you see them riding around their Rolls Royce and their private planes and stuff, I'm like, yeah, but he's not telling them the real path. I mean, you get to this point, but there's a few steps here that are left out. He's selling all aspiration. He's not selling the actual manual to get to where they are. And that's where we're trying to be, that bridge. If you watch our content, we'll not only help you build it from zero up to the point by doing it the right way with a foundation, but you'll then have that point when you see those people in those videos, you'll know the strategies. You'll be like, oh yeah, that's just kind of confirms what Brian and Bo and Reby shared with me.
Right. That's why I love the 9 steps of the FOO, because it's not meant to like restrict you. It's meant to set you up for success, so you can do those kinds of things that you want to, like a rental property or a real estate property. So hopefully that really helped you out. The Sorrow 321, thanks so much for your question. I've got another question from Rishi. The question is, I've made my budget, taken care of the insurances, and put money monthly in MFs. What now? It's kind of boring to just put money and forget. I want something to put effort into. I think that this is an interesting question, because we just went, we did a Q&A just now talking about how great it is with like low cost index funds, like all those kinds of investment, target date retirement funds. Like, oh, it's so easy. It's so set it and forget it. But then there are these people out here who have this personality, who are like doers and achievers and who want more. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, there's several things that just all piles in, and I'm trying to make sure I keep this focused. But I think to start it off, I'll say, don't get busy doing nothing. I think sometimes achievers, we feel like we build these checklists in our heads, and we have to go through these things as fast as possible. Because if you're sitting and letting grass grow under your feet, you're just missing out on all kind of opportunities. So let me tell you the way I would handle this. First, get the foundation right. That really is the financial order of operations. That's step 1 through 9. Everybody probably could almost lip sync knowing I was going to put that out there with moneyguy.com/resources.
Yeah.
But it really is, because, and it sounds like, Rishi really did kind of lay it out with budget. Hey, that's great, because that's going to get you through steps 1 through 4. Make sure you don't have any high interest debt. Make sure you don't have, you got your emergency reserves through a rainy day fund set up. The insurance, I love that. Once again, it's paying a lot of respect to risk management. And then mutual funds investing. That's the automatic wealth building. Now, look, Rishi, when you get to the point that you're in hyper-accumulation mode, and that's where you're looking at step 7, where you've got the 3-bucket strategy, you can then, I have no problem, and this is what I like, once you get to 25% of your gross income, that is working for you in the boring stuff, as you put it, the mutual funds, the ETFs, and those type of things. It's automatic for the people wealth building, where you're kind of automatically through an automation. I say, how many times can I say automatic and automation? But it really is. It shows how important it is to make your money just,
it's powerful
without
stuff.
you doing any behavior, without you making any decision matrix. It's just always be buying. That is just set up for you so you can get to step 8 of the financial order of operations, which is then, hey, Now what do I envision? Am I doing the why? Do I have this desire? I'm going to start, I'll just make it internal. Blogging, YouTube, or do I want to go side hustle, or do I want to go pursue this passion for this charity? I mean, this is why I love, if you can build the foundation, you don't have to get busy doing nothing, but it's also not so crazy that you're scheming in a way. It really lets you kind of self-internalize and actualize yourself. Look at you, what makes you tick, what brings you happiness, and then fine tune it for that, not off of what some influencer puts out there with their Rolexes and their Rolls Royces. It could be very custom to you, and that's the way I would do it. Is make sure and prioritize getting to step 8.
Yeah, I really like that. I hope that kind of gives you some food for thought. Thank you so much for your question, Rishi. Okay, got a question from Nate. He says, I have an 8-year-old with Down syndrome. How do I start saving for my daughter since she has this unique circumstance? Any other financial advice for parents who have kids with special needs or special circumstances?
Yeah, look, I wish we could do even more content on this, but it's just it's so specialized.
Yeah.
It is one of those things, but fortunately you come to the right place, because I've shared with you guys, my youngest is autistic. We know when you have a child like this, you know that it does come with the extra weight of not only do you have your retirement, but you have their independence money, because there's a good chance. I mean, we all die at some point. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. So you better plan accordingly. So you need to have money. So what's the right way? And there's a delicate balance with this, is because if you just start piling money into a brokerage account, because there's always this decision matrix that comes when they become adult status. Can they qualify for Social Security or some benefits from the government to help with basic expenses? And it's important to at least pay respect to that based upon where you are in your financial strategy. And I love that, just like, I mean, it's been decades now, the government kind of said, hey, let's incentivize something we think is important for society. And decades ago, they set up 529 plans for college savings. And I think that really did revolutionize. That's one of the positive things the government has done in education that didn't cause all kind of other ripple effects. But I love what 529s did. And then I think that went so well that the community of people who have kids that are either alternative learners or have some type of special needs condition, they said, hey, why don't we do the same structure as these 529s, but make it where this money is exempt from the calculation up to a certain level, from all the Social Security calculations and so forth. And they came up with what's called ABLE accounts. And there's a great website. I don't know if Daniel, you could probably, or Nate, y'all could, because y'all have your computers there. I want to make sure I give that website right. But there's a great website that gives you anything and everything you want to know about ABLE accounts. If you do a quick Google search, let me see what you
Is it ABLE NRC?
Yeah, that's it. That's actually it. So give that website.
ABLENRC.org. Daniel will probably throw it in the chat for you too. But yeah, you referenced that before.
If you will go check out that website, it will help you out tremendously, because it is like not every state has. I know that's something that they're working on, because this is a concept that's still trying to get traction. But fortunately, I know in my journey, the state of Tennessee has a really good plan, and we've been maximizing that. So I would tell Nate to, first go take advantage of this. And then, look, my sweet girl, it's one of those things where I know the weight of having a child like this is hard. So just make sure you plug into the community. And I know you didn't ask that stuff, but that's part of what I love about, like, my daughter's school. All the parents all have unique learning kids and unique kids that have some type of condition. And it's really good to have community in this stuff, because it's tough. So hopefully, Nate, that helps you to know that there are tools to help you in that before you graduate to the expensive or complicated special needs trust.
Yeah. We really appreciate you asking that question. I know that there's always these kind of nuanced or unique circumstances. And so I love that we're able to speak to that from time to time as well. So thanks so much for your question, Nate. Hopefully that helps and kind of gives you some food for thought. Okay. We've got a question from Lewis. He says, I have a question related to the financial order of operation steps. Should you skip maxing out your 401k and instead fund your taxable brokerage account to save on paying ordinary income taxes. We got some fancy footwork happening here.
To save on ordinary income taxes through an after-tax account?
So should you skip maxing out 401k and instead fund your taxable brokerage account to save on paying ordinary income taxes?
Oh, he's talking about when you actually pull the money out.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. Okay. Lewis, you got a lot of moving parts there. Here's the thing. I would, when you pull money out, I don't know how old Lewis is, but that's going to be in retirement. I mean, realistically, these are retirement accounts. The title is not a bait and switch. It really is, hopefully, if we use for retirement. And there is a goal that I tell people, especially if you're planning on leaving before 72, which is most people. Most people do retire before 72, and that's the required minimum distribution age, is that you're hoping that when in retirement, that time between the date you leave the workforce before you reach age 72, that your income taxes actually, or at least your tax rate goes down, because you're in your peak earning years in your 40s and 50s, and you're paying the highest tax rates on that ordinary income. You're kind of hopeful that when you retire and you start living off this money, especially if you have the 3-bucket strategy, meaning you have that's in step 7 of hyperaccumulation. You have your after-tax, you have your tax-deferred, and then you have your Roth accounts, which are growing tax-free, that you can kind of legally manipulate the tax code to lower and minimize it. Because if some years, if your income is really low from all sources, you pull it out of that tax-deferred account, and and just take advantage of the low tax rates that our tax code has. If you're maybe you had income coming in and you want to try to minimize, or you want to do some Roth conversions or something like that, where you turn tax deferred into tax free, you could live off of your after tax account to kind of create a bridge. So I don't mind if you're doing 25% of your savings and you've gone through steps 1 through 6, you can then graduate to step 7, which is hyperaccumulation. But if you're in a higher income situation and you have the opportunity to max out that retirement account, and you're not doing so, you can just get to maxing out just so you can avoid, because you're thinking about ordinary income tax in retirement. That seems a little out of place to me. It feels like you've created a worry about something that may or may not. Now, look, I think taxes very well go up in the long term because the government has a lot of responsibilities and obligations that they're going to have to pay for. But I also know, even when I have that certainty, I also know that politicians are really scared of older people because they vote en masse. So they typically create tax policy that favors people who fall into those strategies. I hate to be so cynical about this, but it's just the reality. And it's not even political. I think, nobody's going to get mad left or right when you say, look, older people do vote, and the tax policy typically reflects that. So I think that there is even with tax rates going up, there's a good chance that retirees or people living off of their investments will have some really cool planning structures. So to miss out on that because you're worried about ordinary income tax rates seems a little premature.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your question, Lewis. Hopefully that kind of sheds a little bit of light on kind of a complex topic, but we really appreciate you being here. All right, Ashley has a question. She says, we are just over the Roth IRA income limit. We can do a Roth 401k as well. So which is better? Should she do a backdoor Roth over the Roth 401k? How does she make this call?
Well, because Ashley kind of told on herself. She said she's in a higher income situation because you make over the Roth funding. That's why I do love the backdoor Roth opportunity, is because it allows you to do both. I mean, I feel a little, guilty when I tell people, hey, maximize both opportunities. When I'm looking at the financial order of operations, if you're a person that's in a higher income situation, which it sounds like, and I don't know if Ashley's single or married, but if you're married, I mean, that's close to $200,000 a year of income coming in. I want you to have both because I really do want you to have the best version of your financial self, so that when you retire, you're doing things, or you have the option to retire or do life or pursue a different passion when you want and how you want. That's really valuable. So I don't think it has to be an either or. I'm a little harder on higher income people because I think you have more potential, and just like a good coach is going to squeeze people they see potential out of. So I want to encourage you to try to take advantage of doing the Roth IRA. If you can do backdoor Roth conversion strategies, but then when you get to step 6, now that's a little deeper on the decision matrix, and the fact that you now have to figure out what's your tax rate, what's your federal tax rate, what's your state income tax rate, kind of combine those things, and then you have to compare that to what you think your retirement tax rate will be, and if it's in the higher, if you're at the tippity top of the say 30% and beyond, because if you had your state, a lot of you might even be paying 40% income taxes. Then that's going to have you in step 6 of the financial order of operations saying, hey, if I'm paying 40% in taxes, why don't I put that in the traditional retirement account, like a traditional 401k, a traditional 403b? Because I think when I retire at 60 or 65 or even 55, there might be an opportunity to do some Roth conversions or do some other unique strategies that will lower that long-term tax bill.
Yeah. And it'd be silly not to mention, this is kind of getting into one of those more complex decisions. Maybe Ashley's here, maybe she's not yet, and that's either way is fine. But we do have fantastic financial advisors on staff, and you do reach a graduation point where your situation just gets so complex that you're no longer making these like $1,000 mistakes. There, $10,000 and even more thousands of dollars could be at risk if you kind of make the wrong call. And you might be getting to the point where you want to stress test these retirement plans, right? Like Brian's talking about tax rates and federal rates and all of these things. And if you're kind of like, oh, shoot, I'm not sure where I'm at, and this is getting complicated and I don't have the time to like figure all this out, maybe it's where you start to think, okay, I might be at the point where I'm taking the relationship to the next level at aboundwealth.com. You can reach out, fill out a little form. It will connect you to one of our fantastic financial associates and advisors. And yeah, I just feel like I should mention that because sometimes these questions get into this complex realm of kind of nuance.
And I'm glad you did bring that up, because there was a comment on YouTube this morning I saw. I didn't respond to it because I was like, well, I didn't want to come off seeming rude, but they're like, you just told us to do index funds. If I can do index funds and you even talk about how good index funds are, why would anybody hire you guys? And I'm always like, man, they think that financial planning is just the investment part. And in a lot of ways, investment part has become commoditized. I mean, index funds, I love that technology and innovation has made it where everybody has access to world-class products and the growing economy that we live in. But that's not what a financial planner should do. If that's what your person or the institution that's charging you fees is doing, is just a good asset allocation of index funds, is that financial planning or is that just asset management for you? And that's the difference, because think about when you get to a level of complexity, that's why we can give it away, is that first of all, you'll want somebody looking at the tax return to make sure, hey, did you take advantage of all the opportunities that were out there? Because that's an annual planning opportunity. They're looking at, hey, what's going on your net worth statement? What changed in the last year? And then when you actually leave the workforce and start living off of the assets, there's a lot of moving parts with Roth conversions. How does your income impact Social Security decision-making, Medicare decision-making, because all those premiums are tied to your income. There's a lot of heavy lifting that goes on. And then a lot of people who are 5 years from retirement are probably saying, because now you've built up 7 figures plus, and you're like, am I even prepared if this thing goes down? If we hit a bear market in my first year of retirement, what does that mean? Have I done the stress test? You mentioned that, and I wanted to echo that. That's what we do. And that's the part that I think a lot of people just don't know what a real financial planner is, because and maybe that's the fault of our industry for being a bunch of salespeople.
Yeah, there are some bad ones out there that say they're financial advisors
that help people maximize their best financial life.
Exactly. Yeah. So Ashley, thanks for your question. I hope that kind of shed some light on this decision. And if you are sitting here thinking, maybe I am that person that should take it to the next level, just go to aboundwealth.com. We'd love to talk to you. Just see where you're at. If this is a good fit, we'd love to talk to you about that. Okay. Postman has a question. He says, does it make sense to slow down investing to pay cash for grad school? Currently investing 25%. It would need to take out about $30K in loans. He's 27, and he definitely considers himself a financial mutant. So how should he approach grad school?
Okay, there was a lot of, I want to make sure. So
Totally.
So how old did Postman say he was?
He's 27.
27, grad school.
Grad school. Would love to pay cash for it.
Cash.
He's investing 25%, which is great.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
he's already investing
total financial
25%.
mutant. Yes, but he would need to take out about $30,000 in loans if he continues. I'm kind of inferring if he continues to invest that much.
Well, first let's do the low-lying fruit because I love Jonah, who works here at the firm. I had Jonah. He did an internship last year with us, and he says, "Hey, I'm an accounting major. Should I go back and get that 5th year? Because fifth year required, I'd have to go back. I'd probably have to take on some student loan debt." But that would set me up to sit for the CPA exam. Or should I just jump right into my financial planning career? Because Jonah's working here. So I gave him the credit because I was like, let's talk about this. So does it make sense for you to take on debt for more education? Because I think a lot of people are at that crossroads. And for Jonah, I was like, yeah. Hopefully he doesn't mind I'm sharing this. I was like, yeah, I think you're going to, when you're going to reach a level of success. I just knowing this guy, he's going to reach a level of success that I think he's going to look back and say, hey, I wish I'd been able to sit for the CPA exam, pass the CPA exam, have that credential in the background. And so we kind of made that decision, but here's the low-lying fruit. Jonah is actually being a teacher, a TA at graduate level. And it's wiping out a ton of the cost of education. So I first want to know if Postman has gone through the low-lying fruit. Is there things and behaviors and actions you can do to minimize? I've also shared my niece, who I also think is awesome and want her to work here too. Can you tell I'm running my own jobs program? She was an RA. And now I know that's not for a graduate school, but I say that not for the Postman. I say that for somebody else who's trying to figure out how much student loan do I take for education versus the decision of maximizing the opportunity. And I'm always saying, make sure you're looking at the non-financial decisions that you can do behavior-wise, which is if you're in your undergrad, maybe you can go be a resident assistant on the dorm hall so that you can get your housing completely free. If you're a graduate school, maybe you can go be a TA and get a lot of your tuition wiped out. Take advantage of those things first. Now, then we can pivot to, okay, now that we've minimized this down, till we've got it to the smallest impact of what the cost is as possible. I think there is nothing wrong if Postman wants to figure out how he can, because he's already doing 25%. So what I'm trying to figure out is that means that's based on income, and his income might be going down. I would, Postman, I would focus on making sure you're at least doing your Roth IRA, because the government limits how much you can put in that each year, $6,000. And it'd be a shame if you don't max out that. So maybe beyond that, you could then look at how do I minimize the debt? Because especially student loan debt, I'd be curious what the interest rate is. With interest rates going up, it very well could fall into the category of high interest debt to a degree. If we're getting over 6.5% to 7%, that I would pay attention to that, Postman. There's a lot of variables there. I hope I gave you something to go kind of look at, because it really is an individualized answer for you. But I would make sure I'm still doing Roth, because the government won't give you those years that you miss funding those accounts. And then I would try to get out of grad school with as low of a student loan impact as possible.
Yeah. Good advice. Thank you so much for your question. Best of luck in grad school, Postman. And we do have another question here. The username is Some Homeless Man. Just have to give a little disclaimer. That's what he wrote. But he says, Money Guy, I'm 16 and I just started investing in stocks. I have a high yield savings account with Ally Bank and a checking account. I'm trying to make any bit of passive income possible. So this is what he's thinking. Okay. Do you have any advice for him?
16.
He's 16. I know. This is actually very exciting that he's thinking about this already.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out, is he an actor? Is he an influencer? I mean, where do 16-year-olds go to generate enough money that they have a high yield savings account, but they also have an investment account? Good for you. You won't be a homeless man for long.
I know, that's why I thought his username was really funny.
You'll be the best version of yourself financially, man, at some point. I mean, it's So it goes back. This is why I love it. It's universal. It doesn't matter if you're rich, you're starting out. The financial order of operations. So, if you're living, I think this is at 16, you're living with your parents, so you don't have to worry about
likely.
A lot of the things the risk avoidance things. Your cash reserves is going to be filled up really quick because your 3 to 6 months of living expenses. I mean, when you live at home with your parents, your living expenses are probably next to nothing. So just get past the emergency reserves of having a few thousand. Well, I normally say make sure you have thousands of dollars but figure out what your 3 to 6 months is living at home. And then make sure you're doing the Roth. So because he said stocks.
He did.
I'm more concerned about the structure of not what the investment is. I would be more concerned, are you getting a Roth IRA with whatever income you are earning? Because that tax-free growth with the compounding. And then you said stocks, that's really sexy. That's more of a step 8 in my ideas of the financial order of operations, where you start buying individual stocks because that's extra. I would rather you really focus on a index fund when you're 16, where you're buying into the ever-growing economy that we live in. A total market index or something like that would just crush it in the long term, probably, especially with all the volatility we're having. And that lets you really save yourself a lot of emotional stress of watching that single stock or several stocks go up and down, because it is an emotional pull on you for no reason. Whereas if you're just buying in the broad success of innovation and the total market growing, you're going to love it. And then, that gets you to the point eventually you'll be, I think you're going to conquer the world. It's 16 saving, because I already share. Now look, cover up the beer. This $1 Fanta for a 20-year-old could turn into an $88 at retirement. Fast forward for a 16-year-old. If you go to moneyguy.com/resources, we have a money multiplier slide that actually takes it from 0 to retirement.
Yeah, the young wealth multiplier. You need this for sure. A 16-year-old, your money is well over 100 times growth. So every dollar you're making a decision on has the potential to have 100-fold increase. Maximize that. So you're crushing it. So I hope I gave you enough decision matrix there with the financial order of operations. Make sure you have cash. That's always good to have a little cash in your pocket. Make sure you're taking advantage of the Roth IRA, and then don't focus on stocks. Focus on the behaviors of how much you can save and build into those tax favored accounts, because I think that's what's going to really set you up for long-term success. You mentioned looking at doing some passive income and finding new income as well. And I don't know, we just did the topic portion at the beginning of this full video about how to actually become a millionaire. And we shared a TikToker talking about this crazy way he invested in some crypto and got to $1 million, and it looked really cool. And I know there's a lot of passive income out there like that too, especially on TikTok, people doing all kinds of different businesses. Some of them are great and legit, some of them are not. So just beware. Remember that passive income is very rarely actually passive. I would even go out on a limb and say, at least at the beginning, even if you find something that there's a lot of work up front and then kind of tapers off, just beware of that. Not everything that people tout as passive income and ways to get rich are actually the right thing. And so that's why Brian and Bo, and now myself too, just say, hey, make sure you've got the basics down. Look at the financial order of operations. Look at how exciting your money multiplier is at 16. Definitely go grab that resource, Young Money Multiplier, at moneyguy.com/resource. It's free. It's going to show you exactly how much your $1 can turn into by the time you are ready for retirement. So, think about these things, because you're young and you don't want to. I get what you're going for, and I love that entrepreneurial spirit, but just beware. Do it the smart way, right?
I think you bring up a great point, because we had an earlier question where it says, this feels too boring.
Yeah.
Just doing, and I think a lot of people, because really the only passive thing for a young person is like just doing index funds and things, because all the things like you mentioned, real estate, and I'm a real estate investor as well. And it's far from passive. I mean, just in the last week, and I've shared this, like Bo has had to do a plunger thing. We've had we've had a problem with one of the drains downstairs in a tenant's place. We're still negotiating with the roofers about replacing the roof. And I know that that's not what he's talking about getting into, but I just want to put a word out there, because so many of these influencers are talking about how they make money while they sleep. And real estate's great, but it's far from passive if you're doing it right. I mean, I just don't, I guess you could talk about REITs, syndicates, but those things are so far out there. As a 16-year-old, you don't need to be looking at syndicates yet. You don't need to be looking at going there. You just need to be buying an index fund, rocking that foundation so you're set up for just that automatic millionaire status in not too long in the future.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complex. Sometimes it's better because then you have that energy to build things that you're passionate about and spend time on things that you actually want to. So yeah, thanks so much for your question. I love it when we get some younger people in the chat who are actually thinking about this stuff and watching the Money Guy show. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. So thanks so much for your questions today, guys. It was an honor to be here at the desk with Brian. Looking forward to Bo coming back next week. And yeah, thanks so much. Be sure to head out to moneyguy.com/resources. We'll load you up with all the free resources that we mentioned on the show today, right there at that website. And then if you want a deeper dive, you can go to learn.moneyguy.com. We've got a course, we've got a net worth tool. All of these are supposed to set you up for success financially, because we believe there's a better way to do money, and we want to give you access to that.
Guys, I'm your host, Brian, Reeby, and the rest of the Money Guy team. We're out.